Simformer Biz News Inside of the Week. So, even though last week's results were quite promising, right now we're looking at a very interesting situation, and just simply interesting how well the participants will pull it off. Most probably their cash is starting to run out, even though this is quite an interesting result because they managed to pull off already 4 weeks, which means it's a whole month. My question is, will the management of those companies will take that into consideration or not? To pull off already 4 weeks, which means. So either way, we'll see how the whole thing will go on, and naturally, we'll see what's the situation. So now let's jump to the results and once again go for the Pro League first. So naturally, the revenue, it looks very promising, but the profits per turn, which means the expenditure, is quite high. Most probably the investments towards the business are expanding. Like, my question is, will the companies be able to stabilize and see any returns pretty fast? The trick is, however, when you're bringing company back from, let's say, a downfall or a crisis, that once you received and into your hands, into your capable hands, is not to overdo it with expansion. Expansion is good, but unmanaged expansion is a clear road to the downfall, or in other words, bankruptcy. Okay, so let's see. And now we see this revenue that is looking very promising. The question is, will that situation compared to by ASM Wave, compared to Diana Corporation, which business structure will be seen as the more efficient? Because when we look closer to the ASM Wave, we can see that the structure is pretty clear, but pretty, I'll say, narrow. The only specialization is aimed towards a retail trade, expecting that it will, well, be a breakthrough and the profits will start coming. Will that work it out properly? We'll see. If we see a little bit closer the Diana Corporation structure here, however, we see that, well, this team is covering a larger field of activities, which means this is about great possibility to see how well they are doing later on, which means sort of involves a larger variety, a larger chance for success due to a large variety of activities in different fields and less competition at the same time. So they're covering a larger field of business structures as well as industries. Now, however, which looks still very sad, is the motor store structure, which actually has a low chance of success due to the Spain being not that big, or let's say wealthy compared to US or Germany. So I would be careful with this kind of product mix, and the efficiency of product mix, it does not look that promising. Which, in case, if we look at the ACM Wave position, looks more promising. However, the problem is that these products are not that fast moving, and considering the high competition on the market, this can be quite problematic because the pricing strategy has to be very flexible and sensitive. Let's take a look, shall we? So these are motorcycles in Spain, and see who's, well, still doing one. And we see that ACM actually are losing their position, and Diana Corporation actually is looking better. Why? Well, they do have better pricing policy at some point. The question is naturally in which city. Now, of course, depending on the city, we see that ASM Web actually has more top sellers in these variety of these cities. So it's a question, well, how it will look later on. The problem naturally is, so if these sales are actually looking good so far, and we see that, well, there are positions, there are sales happening. The problem is that the sales and profits are not covering the investments. So once again, the deal here with this business is really about the optimum use of the resources, of the limited resources that these participants have on their hands. So question is, who will optimize the business structure first and well, have the best results so far? As I mentioned before, if we look closer at the rating again, we could see that in overall, certain companies having small businesses and small or average revenues can become, take better positions by simply optimizing their business and not growing so recklessly. A reckless usage of the money, or in other words, reckless investment, will decrease your possibility of safe business development. So in this specific case, we are speaking about a chance and about your chances and your possibilities to win, actually. So how about we take a look at the number one position of overall performance indicator, and that'll be all you need is here. We can see that the company is actually growing. We see two new stores, but at the same time, we see that even though the revenue is pretty small, the profits or the losses per turn are actually pretty stable and not that big, which means they control the situation better and actually can survive the period without going bankrupt. So once again, being careful and slow and not that big, radical, drastic expansion of the business can be a solution. Although I have to admit, those who not act drastically and do not look forward to invest will not win in the end. Well, we'll see who will win in the end afterwards. If we take a look at ZTech, we can also see that this is a big company, big structure, but as we see, it's not yet paying up. So question is, what will be the decision of the management? Will they decide to give another chance for these participants or not? Good question, huh? All right, so once again, I believe that the results for the month will actually be the deciding ones, and we will see who will end up closing down the month with at least some profit and who will end up closing the month with actually even bigger minus. What will be? We'll see right next week. Well, I will see you next week with another insight of the week, and also we will see what is happening in the market that is happening between the fighters, between the participants of the simulation, and also the businessmen that are fighting for their place in Spanish market. Thank you very much, and I will see you next week.